Hi there, guys. Action Johnny, aka Day Caniel, neither of which are my real name, back to give you another slice of L5R Crab Clan goodness. I've got a little agenda for today's deck tech. I've been very organized, so you may see me flicking to and from that, just so I can concisely analyze the points of this video rather than going on an endless ramble, which I like to seem to do. So we're improving, we're upgrading, we're getting our tech together. So I've decided to make this video because in a couple of weeks' time, I will be attending my very first Grand Kotei, which is the Birmingham Grand Kotei in the UK. I'm flying back to see some friends and family for a holiday, and I thought, well, it'd be rude to not get some good old-fashioned European card game playing experience in on my home turf. And I don't want to sound arrogant and presumptuous, but I would absolutely love to make a crab Hanamoto. So that's going to be my goal of the tournament. Whether that's realistic or not, I'm sure we'll find out on the day. But I feel like if there was ever a time to have a crack at it, this is it. I've also got the Seattle Kotei coming up, which is at the end of June, basically a month afterwards. So L5R's in an interesting state at the minute. It's kind of in a sort of bridge state between Cycle 1 and Cycle 2. So we've just had the Phoenix pack come out a couple of months ago, maybe less than that, maybe like a month ago. And that's caused some waves, as everyone expected it would. Phoenix have gone from being one of the bottom clans to possibly the very top, which is not as surprising as some might think, considering they have twice the amount of cards. Some of them very, very good, very, very powerful. And just the existence of these cards in the meta has forced people to respect them and respect the deck building choices they need to make in consideration to these cards existing in the meta. Yeah, and on top of that, there have been some rumblings of a restricted list. By rumblings, I mean rumors. Nothing concrete has arisen yet, so for the purposes of this video, we won't be taking it into consideration, but it may or may not become a factor down the line, depending on if these rumors prove to be true or not. So yeah, where do crab currently sit in this crazy post-Phoenix pack world that we live in? Well, unfortunately, gang, crab taken a bit of a knock. New Phoenix is so good, mainly because of the stronghold, which allows them to play the Against the Waves event over and over again to stand their guys, and the new character Tadaka, who is the formidable Earth Shigenja that prevents any event in your discard pile from being played. When I say your, I mean the opponent's discard pile, from being played unless you've obtained the Earth Ring, which is nigh on impossible against a Phoenix player if they don't want you to have it because of display of power. So things have gotten harder for Crab. We're a slow, ponderous faction anyway, and we're also a faction that relies on our boards sticking around and getting that value in the late game. And Phoenix, if anything, are now got so much value within their faction just because of the endless stands. They could just use the same character over and over again to break provinces. So it's quite we've taken a little knock there. So we've tumbled down the tier ratings a little bit, in my opinion. We're probably now tier 2. If Scorpion, Dragon, and Phoenix are all tier 1, Crane are tier 1.5. I'd say Crab and Lion are tier 2. Maybe Crab is in a slightly better spot than Lion, but military clans are certainly not in a great place at the minute. But nonetheless, we must go on, we must try. So after a lot of thought and a lot of discussion with other fellow Crab players, I've decided that with the 2 weeks I have left before Birmingham, I'm going to go back to the basics and just play the tried and tested Crab deck that has done well in tournaments all throughout the game's life cycle, which is, of course, Crab Unicorn. I've approached this slightly differently than others because what you have to understand is I've been working on this deck pretty much continuously since the game began. I'm very familiar with it. I'm very familiar with what all the cards do. It takes a few minutes to build a deck, but it takes a lifetime to refine it to a point of perfection. And I believe now that within this meta that we are currently existing in, that this version of Crab Unicorn is the best that I can do. There are a couple of choices that some people might raise their eyebrows at, but hopefully we can discuss them and you can see why I've gone for that. So let's look at just some general deck stuff. So the strategy of Crab Unicorn, I feel at this point, is pretty inarguably, it is a Dishonor deck first and foremost, and a Break deck or a Conquest deck second. And what I mean by that is that the way Crab works as a faction and the way in which we have to play the tools we've been given is we have a weak early game and the potential for a sort of unbreakable late game. We are the late game clan. We're not the clan that runs around with, looking for early tempo, playing lots of small dudes, playing lots of cards, drawing lots of cards, having lots of actions. That's not how Crab go. Crab sort of limp out of the starting post where a lot of other clans sprint. If you think about Lion and Crane, for example, who can put like 2 to 3 small cost characters on the board and still have a load of fate going into turn 2, it's a lot harder for us. Our low cost characters aren't as good as other clans. A lot of them are either sort of like slightly below curve or just serve some sort of function of value. So like really the Vanguard Warrior, while it is a great little 2-cost from the fact that he gives us an extra fate on a character, for all intents and purposes, he's just a 2-1 while he's in play that does nothing. It's not until he's exhausted himself and we can sacrifice him that he's doing something. And Crab have a lot of cards like that. A lot of cards that keep you in the game but don't really affect the state of play. So the tools we have to win the game are pretty much geared towards Dishonor. I'll discuss these cards later on, but you probably know what they are by now. So yeah, that's what we have to do. We have to basically suffer and slog and take shit through the early turns of the game so we can make it through to the end of the game where we will just win. Because that, like surviving essentially is our win condition. Surviving and whittling. You've got to playing Crab is an exercise in managing your board, your economy expenditure, by which I mean the amount of cards you play and the fate you spend. Managing your province breaks, because you are going to lose provinces just getting to the late part of the game. It's just part and parcel of your opponent spending their cards and you trying to stop them from, in as much as you can. Managing your breaks so we can just get to the promised land of turn 4, hopefully be in a much better state than our opponent, having weathered the storm, and then that's when we start to come back and really put some pressure on. So that's the strategy. Now you're probably wondering why are crabs so slow, and it's to do with just how expensive the faction is. Our conflict deck has a 25 fate cost, so over half of our deck in our conflict cards cost a fate. That means if I have a hand of 9 cards, 5 to 6 of those cards are going to cost a fate, and that really limits what I can play in a turn. Even more limiting, of course, the actual cards themselves and what they do, but we'll go into that later. We'll just look at expense for now. We've got a very expensive conflict deck, and this is further compounded by an expensive dynasty deck. We essentially have 12 low-cost characters, because you never really want to buy the Keeper Monks. You just want to get them into play for free if you can. So we got 3 2 costers we're just binning and trying to cheat in, and then the rest, the 12 are the ones that the other 12 are the ones we buy. But most of our deck that we want to, the characters we want to buy and we want to fade up, they're expensive. You know, we've got fucking 3 7 costers. So we've got 7 3 costers. We've got 8 4 cost cards. We've got Casada. You know, we've got all this fate stuck in our conflict deck. We're going to be spending a lot of money. Yeah. So a big part of playing Crab is managing your money really well. So, and that can be very difficult to do because early on you'll feel like you'll be going behind. You know, you'll be losing conflict. You'll be getting your provinces broken. You'll really want to be spending fate on the cards in your hand, but when your opponent plays a card for 0 and you have to match that card by paying a fate, and then they do something for 0 and you pay a fate, you start to put yourself in a position very early on where you are unfavored, and that's going on. So we almost kind of need to like resist the urge to splurge in the early game, and that's true of both declaring conflicts and spending cards as well, and certainly buying characters. We always want to try and go for the pass fate. It's not always possible, but we want to try. We want to buy our dynasty characters in such a way that we can get that extra fate, and really we just want to claw fate from as many places as possible. Yeah, so that is the general strategy of the deck. It's managing your money, managing your board, being conservative with your plays, and just trying to chip away at their honor in the early game through bidding, through, you know, hopefully trying to tempt them into playing an assassination, spiking them on the odd policy debate or other duel. So by the time we get to like turn 3, turn 4, they're at lower honor and everything else is kind of in our favor. You know, hopefully we'll have more characters, hopefully we'll have a similar number of cards, and hopefully we'll have a better board. And then when we're in that late game, we close out by starting to get a bit more aggressive, muscling through some conflicts, limiting what our opponent can play back through Watch Commander, and winning that way. So how do we survive in the early game? Well, the concept I've been kicking around, also not the concept, the term, I guess, which is used to describe how we can do that, is value. So Crab can't play a lot of dudes, unlike some factions. And we only have a few conflict characters as well, and they're only 1-costers, so you can't really rely on them to save the day. They're just handed out. We get value from our dynasty cards and a few cards in our conflict deck. What is value? Value is basically getting the most you can out of a character or a card. And Crab are quite good at doing this. We have, like, charge is obviously huge value. Everyone has charge. So, you know, this isn't unique. But charge is great value because you get a character for a fate that would otherwise cost you more. And then you can further compound that value with things like reprieve and iron mines, keeping it around. So you're essentially, like, every time you save a character that you paid 1 for, you're doubling the amount of value on that character. So a Witch Hunter, for example, if I charge him in for 1, I've saved 3 fate. If I then save him and he's around another turn, he's essentially kind of generated me another 4 fate, because that's 4 fate I don't have to spend on dynasty characters or whatever, you know, because he's already there. I don't have to replace him. Value is also stuff like getting characters into multiple conflicts. So anything that like readies characters or stops them from bowing is adding value. And, you know, as Crab players, we really, really rely on this as well. Also, like, value, I guess, if you have conflict characters in hand and you know that you can probably play them, so you've got your little 1-cost guys, and, you know, you can probably, like, survive the turn by just playing these guys. It allows you to pass early on your dynasty and get the fate, and that generates value as well. So conflict characters can be considered a source of value as well, especially if you get that passing. Yeah, well, only if you get that passing fate. So yeah, we just want to, like, use as much value as we can to last into the late game and build our board into the late game, where finally we can start being a bit more aggressive. So let's look at our deck. Let's first go to provinces, because this is the quickest. this is pretty much the, but save for the air province, this is pretty much the row I've been running for ages now. Just because, ideally, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not mad on rally to the cause on the stronghold. I like having a big beefy stronghold because often in a dishonor deck, um, your row is collateral, so you sort of lose. Well, in a crab dishonor deck, you certainly lose your provinces stalling and dragging out the game. So yeah, it kind of, you do end up buying at your stronghold more often than you think, and rally is just a fucking blank card once it's been used, and most people poke for it these days anyway, so it rarely catches anyone off guard. So I don't like it, but there's nothing better at the minute, and I'd rather have a formidable row that I can defend and that punishes my opponents for doing shit, rather than like a big beefy stronghold. It's an opportunity cost at this point. So defend the walls, great with talisman. It punishes poking if talisman's out. Triggering the ring on defense is really strong, and often, actually, I'd say if they go all in at defend, if they attack, defend the wall, and you think you can successfully defend it, and that ring trigger is valuable, it's worth over committing on defense to win it, because that's really the same as doing an attacking conflict, isn't it? The only thing you didn't get was the fate off the ring. You know, this deck doesn't break, we stall, remember? So breaking provinces doesn't really mean a lot for us. If anything, we just kind of want to find a soft province to farm for most of the game. So defend the walls, you know, it's not always amazing, and sometimes you can mess it up, but it punishes our opponent for poking, and it takes their ring effects away from them and gives it to us, which we like. Manicured Garden, this was fertile fields, but as much as I love card draw, and I really do love card draw more than anything, we need the money. We're poor. We don't have Seeker provinces, so we don't have Seeker economy. We don't get a fate for early province flips. So we need to stick as much in the way of generating fate into the deck as we can. And no, that doesn't mean fair accord, only good stuff, thank you. So Manicured Garden makes it in a fertile field. Meditations of the Tau and Shameful Display are probably going to be in the deck forever until something better comes along, and if they ever print a better province than Shameful Display on Void, then I am worried about the game, because this is just almost an auto-include in every deck now. I don't go for Pilgrimage because Pilgrimage doesn't really do anything for us, whereas Shameful Display helps us in the Crane matchup in giving us honored characters, helps us in the Scorpion matchup by dishonoring their courtiers so they can't steal our stuff and use their cancels. It helps versus Felix and their high glory. It helps versus Dragon and their relatively high glory. It's just better than Pilgrimage in every sense that is only good for as long as they're not breaking it, which most clans, if they want to, can do. So that's our provinces. Let's go over to the Dynasty deck. So in the Dynasty deck, it looks pretty similar. You'll notice that I've kind of gone all in on the free costers rather than picking two and running them at three. So Borderlands Defender is, she's just, you don't take her out of your deck in a minute. Her ability is so good versus so many factions. You know, it takes Admit Defeat off the table, it takes For Shame away. Anything that battles, Kachiko's, Fate Worse Than Death. Super important to stop breaks, and she's got a decent political stat as well, so she has to be 3 in this current meta. So I love running Shuichi, he's great. Covert is really good for stopping people sneaking past him, and also it's good for us on attack back. You know, sneaking past their biggest, nastiest guy is amazing, you know, and that's what helps us get breaks or unopposed conflicts through, really, more importantly, for our Dishonor deck. His ability is great as well. We need the money, as I said. He is a fate generator. I would like to run him at 3, but I had to make some room for Crisis Breaker. Originally, I was running Suichi and the Intimidating Heater at 3. Intimidating Heater is our good times boy. We really like him. he's great. He's great to get out early with some fate on him and just pressures abilities. Well, actually, he's even better later in the game as well. When your opponent's board may be suffering and they can't necessarily commit to 2 conflicts, and your board's a lot bigger. So he's part of our win condition. On top of that, he's just a great body as well. He's a really good charge target. His stats are awesome for his cost. He's just good times. He's good times. Then we have the Breaker, which wasn't in this deck, but after a lot of sort of, thinking about the strategy and what I want to do, and the whole concept of, value and Crab suffering early on, yeah, he needs to be in here. Just the fact that he can be in 2 conflicts a turn gives him his space. That action is really, really great. We're most of the time going to have a smaller board than our opponent, and it's going to be on the back of a few good men that you survive to later game. And anything that can get a character in 2 conflicts, even if it's themselves, is just good. His stats for his slot are kind of shit. Comparing to the defender, who's got a total of 6 stats, and the intimidating healer, who's got a total of 6 stats, and both have good text as well. Statistically, he's in a bit of an odd place. He's super easy to policy debate. He kind of sucks when he's dishonored because he's a 2-0 at that point. But if it's the difference between being able to defend a conflict and stop a break, and maybe put like a Spyglass or a Watch Commander into a conflict and not, then he needs to be in there. He helps us on a few fronts. 1 on the value, 2 on putting the danger attachments into multiple conflicts. So he has to be in the deck. The other thing that's slightly different from normal, is that I have jiggled around my holdings and my 2 slot, not by much, but just by enough. So with Phoenix being absolutely everywhere at the minute, Cloud the Mind is absolutely everywhere. Cloud the Mind sucks for us. So what I've done is I've cut a Vanguard Warrior and I've put in a Mere Mystic. I've also cut an Imperial Storehouse and put in an extra Favorable Ground. So Satoshi's in the deck. He's a really important part of the deck because he fetches the things we need. He either fetches himself and sticks about, so all the attachments go on him, and he's a nice big body as well. Or he fetches our holdings, and or whatever. He's just like an amazing character to have. I personally don't like playing him with any less than 5 stops, and even then, you can sometimes get a really big mill if you're unlucky and put yourself in a compromising position honor-wise. So it was very important that I still have the 5 stops, but I wanted to cut Imperial Storehouse because, quite frankly, a bit underwhelming in the deck. Doesn't really do much other than drawing a card's great, but you're basically trading like a dynasty card for a conflict card, so it's card for card, and it's just pretty low impact on the whole. Favorable Ground is a card I've always loved running at 2, but there just hasn't been the space to do that recently because there are just certain characters I think you need in the deck. So it got cut to 1, and I just found that I wasn't seeing it enough. Like it just wouldn't show up on my row, or it get discarded to Satoshi at a time where I needed to use the rebuild on Iron Mines or something else. So even though it was in the deck, it never really got used. But having 2 means you see it more often on your actual flops. And the whole rebuild Favorable Ground play can be just such fire, and like just the more, if you have a greater number of them, the chances are you're going to be able to rebuild it more easily and see it earlier for the rebuilds where it might make a difference, It's also great for getting Watch Commanders into conflicts and Spyglasses into conflicts to threaten, dishonor, or draw you a card, even when the character's knelt. So it's just good times, this card for Crab, and I really missed having it in 2. So Imperial Storehouse is gone, Favorable Ground goes in, and I've had to cut a Vanguard Warrior to put in the Mere Mystic for the extra Satoshi stop. But also, he's good in this meta for Crab. He's good, you know? He's a cheap character. You obviously don't fate him. You just plop him in, and you get a conflict out of him maybe, and then he gets rid of a Cloud the Mind when he's done. I mean, Cloud the Mind, as I said, sucks. Having it on Kasada sucks. Having it on Satoshi sucks. This guy gets rid of it. You can find him with Satoshi as well. So he's, even though he's a one-off, he's a bit more consistent than you might think. And in all honesty, we're running 9 saves. Well, we were running 9 saves anyway. We got the 2 Warriors. We got the 3 Reprises. We got the 3 Iron Minds. Losing a save out of 9 on the Dynasty side of things, it doesn't feel, even though some people are going to be like, sacrilege, it doesn't feel like the deck has been negatively impacted at all. Yeah, as I said, like the Vanguard Warrior doesn't really do anything, as I said earlier, until he leaves play. So, yeah. Going down to 2 isn't the worst thing in the world. So that's the Dynasty. Pretty straightforward there. Hopefully I can succinctly explain my choices, so it makes sense. Conflict, it's very standard as well. I've tried to make it as cheap as possible, but there are just some things you need to run. Our conflict deck, as you may have noticed, is not action heavy. A lot of the times you'll be struggling to find actions. So in a game of like ping pong, which is kind of what an L5R conflict is, sometimes your opponent will like pass, waiting for you to do something, or they'll expect you to pass so they can do something else, or whatever. But sometimes you need to find like actions to fill the empty spaces with. You're not really going to get that out of Crab. And also, you've kind of got to resist the urge to go card for card with people a lot of the time, because you probably won't win if you do that. It's all about holding on. Pretty much everything in the conflict deck is geared towards this idea of value. There's a few cards that that's not the case in, like our removal cards, which are kind of like the inverse of value. We're getting rid of what our opponents paid for to benefit ourselves and put our own position and make our own position better. But on the whole, a lot of it is just there to survive. These cards are not in the deck to go on breaking sprees. The most important cards in our conflict deck are Watch Commander, because that's what's probably going to help win us the game. Spyglass, because that allows us to bid 1 and draw cards still. Talisman of the Sun, because that can really save your bacon when you've got an all-in attack on your stronghold, or if you just need to control which province they're attacking, like dragging someone into Shameful over and over again and dishonoring out their guy that's leaving play, and they lose another honor from that, is really, really strong. The rest of it is just there to make sure our board is formidable and it sticks around, and it can hopefully participate in multiple conflicts a turn. I've not included policy debate because I feel it's anti-synergistic with the victory type I'm pursuing. Like, if I need to bid honor on an honor die, I need to give my opponent honor so I can win policy debate, then I'm actively stopping. I'm actually delaying winning the game. I may have an advantage for the turn that I play the policy debate. I'll see his hand. I'll know what he's got. I'll get rid of his best cards. But because I don't have a particularly impressive political stat on any of my characters save Shuichi, it's going to be difficult for me to consistently win policy debates without spending honor. It's very important. I feel it's better to spend our conflict slots on shit we're good at, which is military, rather than trying to shoehorn in powerful stuff that doesn't really favor our dynasty choices or our play style. So that's why there's no policy debate. I've gone to 1 customs and I've taken a Wayfinder down. Customs is so good, like when it goes off, like a little a little sneaky one of customs that just comes out of nowhere and stands your dude with all the attachments on, can win you the game sometimes. It's great. We've got the two mountain does not. It sort of acts as a third pseudo mountain does not fall as well, but slightly different conditions. But it's fulfilling the same effect. We're getting multiple conflicts out of a guy. So yeah, really, all this deck does is sit there, build itself up, and sort of put attachments on big guys, and just sit there and take it until the late game where you can sort of finally do something. It's certainly not a play style that everyone enjoys, but I enjoy it, so I don't know what that says about me. Yeah. What else is there to say? Yeah. Oh, the main thing is never ever do a conflict where there is no perceivable way to gain anything from it. So if they've got a board of 5 characters, you've got a board of 5 characters, your first player, it's unlikely that you're going to be able to muscle through it, just because if they really want to stop it happening, they can, and then you're at a weaker position for the swing back. Logic dictates that you just shouldn't do the conflict. You should pass a lot of conflicts in this deck. Your opponent can pass too, but obviously we have cards like Heater, the Intimidating Heater there, that punishes them for doing that, so that's cool. What we don't want to, basically the way Crab work is we're advantaged on defense. Our Stronghold is great. It gives everyone a 1/1 in both stats while we're defending. So theoretically, we're always advantaged when defending, and we're never advantaged attacking. You've got things like Dragon where their Stronghold works both ways. Crane box works both ways. Phoenix is just handy any time. Our box makes us better at defense, so play to your strengths. A lot of our cards help us on, play on this defense file. Talisman is a card that only works on defense. Mountain is a card that only works on defense. They don't help us necessarily win on defense, but they're, these cards and the sort of design style of them, it's pretty obvious what we should be doing, right? We don't want to play our opponent's game. We want to play our game. And our game is saying, come at me, try and kill me, and lose your honor in the process. And if we do that correctly, and we look after our board and our money, and we're not too frivolous of our cards, then we can get to a point in the game where our victory is assured. But that's the only way you're going to do it. Yeah. Anything else to talk about in the conflict deck? Not really. I've been going between 2 and 3 Way of the Crab. I actually think 3 is probably correct now. Just because one of the quickest ways to win as Crab is Assassination Way of the Crab combo first turn. It can be very, very difficult to do anything against if your opponent hasn't drawn the exact cards they need to stop it. And being able to get through 2 ring conflicts unopposed can be incredibly impactful. So, yeah. 3 of is that. Other than that, I think it's all pretty explanatory. The important events are all at 3. We need charge, we need rebuild, we need core games. Even with Tadaka in the meta, that's still the case. Anyway, yeah, that's the deck. That's the tech. I'm going to be recording and playing games of it over the next few days. So stay tuned to the channel and keep an eye out for hopefully some good games and how I play the deck and yeah, bits and bobs like that. Take it easy, gang.